Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Deckin Around. My name is Tyler.
I'm Steve.
And today we are really excited to have an amazing guest on the show, Mahdi Gilbert. But before we jump into it, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. You know, Steve, I know you and I have actually been talking a lot about this guest today, having Mahdi on. I mean, for months. We've known for a while that he's going to be on. I know we've both been really excited just because he's an absolutely amazing magician. So you're pretty pumped, aren't you? I can see it.
I'm super pumped. I've been, like you said, I've been really looking forward to it. And I mean, he's amazing. I've seen him on Fool Us and just blew my mind. And I'm super excited.
It's going to be a fun one. And it was funny today. I posted a message on Reddit earlier letting everyone know, hey, we're going to have Mahdi on the show later today. And immediately people chimed in. They're like, I saw him do lectures. He's amazing. He has such a stage presence. And that even just got me more amped for the show today. So I'm really, really excited.
Yeah, I agree.
So before we swing into the show, though, let's give a quick shout out to our sponsors. First, we have Docs Playing Cards, who will soon be launching the V2 Latin Quarter playing cards. If you missed out on the first Kickstarter for Latin Quarter, let me tell you, they are phenomenal decks. I had a deck or two myself. I absolutely love them. They handle great. This is going to be another rendition of the deck set with chips for poker as well. It's a beautiful box set of chips. Make sure to keep an eye out on Doc's Playing Cards upcoming Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And our other sponsor, Marvelous Decks. Your imagination is about to burst open as playing cards come to life with Marvelous Decks. You ever have that experience as a kid where you're outside trying to catch fireflies in a jar and it's just this whole magical experience? Or when you're outside and you see a butterfly flitter by and there's just this iridescence that shimmers off their wings? Well, Marvelous Decks is bringing that experience to playing cards. So keep an eye out for Marvelous Decks.
I'm excited about that. And you know what the crazy thing is? Every time you mention like fireflies, it kind of makes me cry because we don't have fireflies on the West Coast. And back home when I was a kid, oh my God, I used to do that every single night in my front lawn. You catch them in your hand and then you like blow on them and they glow. It's so cool. So I'm looking forward to that deck. That way I can like kind of remember what it was like.
Get that nostalgia back again, without a doubt. Exactly. So guys, without further ado, here is Mahdi Gilbert.
Mahdi!
What's up, buddy?
Hello guys. Hello everyone. Thank you for coming in. I'm doing good. I had a pretty good day. I went to a farm, so that was nice.
Oh, nice. What did you do at a farm today?
Just went with some family members. My nephew, who's a baby, it was his first time seeing some chickens and stuff like that. So that was pretty fun.
Cool.
That's really awesome. See, right back to that whole Marvelous Decks thing, that nostalgia factor of a kid, like seeing animals for the first time or going to like petting zoos when you're young is such a cool experience that I think as an adult, you don't always appreciate as much.
Yeah, no, that's so true. What are they called? 4-H fairs? Is that what they call them?
So they have like there's 4-H fairs and like things like that are much more like agriculturally oriented, but it sounds like I'm guessing it was like a farm semi-local to you?
It was, it's a farm here in Toronto. It's for tourists and stuff. You can just go and visit it. I'm not too sure what they do other than, have the animals walking around. But, maybe they I think they have a gift shop. I don't know. I'm not too sure.
Nice.
But it was fun.
Cool. What was your favorite animal there?
I saw the pigs there. Which made me pretty hungry. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I think that's a fair. I think that's a fair thing. I always have these like moments of like wondering. I'm like, I really do like animals, but like bacon is spectacular. Like
it is. Well, also certain animals you can sort of see how they taste. Like a chicken, you can't really see how they taste because like they're covered with all the feathers and everything. But with a pig, you can really just like you know what you're getting.
Maybe that's why I don't eat. Maybe that's why I don't eat bacon.
Do you really not eat bacon, Steve? Wow.
I probably eat bacon maybe 2-3 times a year. I'm not a huge bacon fan. I don't really eat pork either, though. Like I don't eat like sausage, pork sausage, or anything. I really don't eat red meat either. It's kind of weird.
So you only eat chicken.
It is pretty healthy. Well, I mean, there's different health things that you need, in terms of diet. But I'm a big fan of meat. Like I've tried eating vegetarian or vegan and stuff like that, and it's really not for me. Like I just get so much joy out of eating meat.
No, don't get me wrong. I eat Are we at 10 minutes yet?
No, man, not even close.
I eat the crap out of chicken, turkey, like. Yeah, I go to town on that stuff. The red meat just doesn't deal well with me. And I mean, I've eaten pork when I was younger, but for the most part, it's pretty much like if I want the meat kind of feeling, I'll eat ground turkey or something. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Kind of boring. Kind of boring like that. I'll eat pulled pork.
Yeah, pulled pork is pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty rad.
So you do eat pork, but not bacon.
But I'll probably eat pulled pork maybe twice a year.
Maybe try it with some bacon strips. You might change your mind. That's
you know what I will. So when I eat carbonara, like Italian carbonara, I'll cook bacon with it. But that's probably like included in the 2-3 times a year.
See, I don't know, man. I love bacon, but I mean, listen, not eating bacon is probably it's probably the healthiest thing you can do when it comes to like pork products. A pork chop is significantly more healthy than a strip of bacon. So
very true. And Paul Ruccio said, Mahdi, remember going to the steakhouse in New York with BK?
Of course. Unfortunately, that steakhouse closed. That was my favorite steakhouse, and they had amazing burgers. They're amazing steak, really, just a great place. But they went out of business. So hopefully, it's hard to find good steak. It's hard to find good restaurants where you can, sit down and become a regular. It's really hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, especially nowadays. But do you like Japanese food like hibachi?
I don't know too much about Japanese food, but people take me to different restaurants and stuff, and I'll eat a lot. I just don't know the names of anything. I don't know.
Like Japanese, like hibachi restaurant. Have you been to hibachi?
I've been hibachi, yeah. Hibachi is very much like the cooking show where they're doing like the spatulas like spinning and they try and throw shrimp in your mouth. It's very much entertainment as well as cooking.
Yeah, their steak and tri-tip and all is like butter. It's so good. I can eat the crap out of that steak, that's for sure.
Oh man! So now that we've had a solid discussion about food here, Mahdi, we're even more excited to have you on the show just because of your accomplishments as a magician. I think you've really changed the way people view sleight of hand in so many amazing ways. I mean, you've been on Penn Teller Fooler and done so many really great shows across the world. I mean, I was watching actually a YouTube video the other day of you performing, I'm pretty sure on like a German show, which was really interesting. I didn't understand much of what they were saying because they did such a good job dubbing over. I like faintly heard English in the background and then instantly there was German dubbing. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to watch the magic and absolutely blown away. But what really got you into magic originally?
Oh man. I don't know. I've always been fascinated by magic. I never really saw too much magic growing up. I didn't have, TV where we had magic on it or the internet. So I never saw magic and I never saw a magic show. But I knew that it existed. I heard some students in school talking about it, and they would talk about what they were seeing on TV, David Copperfield and David Blaine, and they would describe the magic to me. And, they sort of knew some of the secrets. So I was hearing the description of the trick and then seeing a really bad expose, being like, oh, okay, interesting. And I didn't really know too much about it, but I knew that it was something that existed. So when I got older, I really just wanted to find out more about it. And it's a hard thing to get into. I think it's easier nowadays with the internet, but I mean, I had the internet, the internet existed, but the internet back then is a lot different than now.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
just the way things are organized. But I always, was fascinated by magic. Growing up, I felt like so many things were impossible for me. I thought if I become a magician, I'll just be able to do anything. And when I would see magicians do magic, they made me feel like I could do anything. It was just a really powerful experience watching magic. I was very attracted to that. And when I was maybe 13 or 14 years old, I was on the internet. They didn't have YouTube back then. But I found a video of Darren Brown, and he was doing some pickpocketing stuff, and it was hypnosis. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. This is like magic. I didn't even know he was a magician. I didn't even know what mentalism is. Like, I didn't know what was going on, but I'm like, this is really cool. And I started learning more and more about it. And I just got really into mind reading and things with memory and psychology and influence. And that was sort of my entry path into magic.
That's cool. Now, how long have you been? I mean, I don't know how old you are now, but how long has your love for magic been around? Sounds kind of weird. how long has your love for magic been around? How long have you been practicing / studying magic?
So when I first got into it from watching Darren Brown, at the same time I was discovering guys like David Blaine and David Copperfield, and watching, finding videos of World's Greatest Magic and watching those guys. And I didn't really know anything about it. And so I didn't know that there were magic books or magic shops. I would just go to Darren Brown's website, and he would just, he had this reading list for if you were interested in the stuff. And all the books that he recommended had to do with sort of his character. So it had to do with psychology and hypnosis and memory. So a lot of the earlier books that I was reading were on topics like that. And I thought, oh, you just study the stuff, and then you'll be able to control people's minds. And
if only.
Well, no, but and so I would come up with presentations and stuff with my very limited knowledge. And so I just, because I didn't know the traditional magic tricks and how to do them, I just came up with stuff, and I was reading these books on memory. So I'd memorize, decks of cards and license plates and, just all this different information, and come up with effects that I could perform for people.
That's cool.
Really cool.
Now, where did that kind of transition go from like mentalism and that side to, card magic?
So I had been doing, this mind reading type magic at my school with just these effects that I had come up with. And that was really a positive experience for me in terms of doing magic and getting that great feedback. And I would say when I was doing it, there was something missing from it, because I also, discovered this other world of magic with all these guys, David Copperfield and David Blaine. And what they were doing was a lot more physical than what I was doing. What I was doing had to do with imagination and the mind, and they were doing stuff that was real, things that you could see and that you could touch, and you could hold the objects, and you could, things were happening in front of you. And so when I was 16 years old, I set a goal for myself. I said on my 17th birthday, I'm going to learn Sleight of Hand. And so I got a book on card tricks, and I had a deck of cards, and I was so unfamiliar with cards, I didn't even know the difference in between a spade and a club.
Oh, wow.
And for me, that was like a big deal. I'm like, oh, man, how am I going to memorize which one's a spade and which one's a club?
Right.
Like, that was like a real dilemma for me. Because I was it's a weird object unless you're familiar with it. When you perform magic to spectators, oftentimes they confuse the suits.
Right.
So this was, very new for me. So on my 17th birthday, I waited until everybody in my house went to sleep, and until all the lights were turned off, and I just sat there with my deck, and I just tried to, do stuff. And at the beginning, I couldn't do anything with a deck of cards. I couldn't shuffle a deck of cards. I couldn't cut a deck of cards. It was even hard to hold, because it's 52 pieces of paper. They're very slippery, especially the deck is new. Cards are slippery. And I didn't have any experience with cards at all. So it was really hard to even do the most basic stuff. Okay, you have to cut for a trick, and then you have to spread the cards. How do you spread the cards? How do you pick up the cards? How do you pick up the cards off a table? How do you do all this stuff? I really couldn't do anything in the beginning. So that's what my starting point was with all of this.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much said, like, in the very beginning of that story that, you had to learn sleight of hand. But honestly, you actually created your own sleight of hand. So it's like you couldn't learn sleight of hand, right? You basically created this whole new way of doing magic.
Well, the thing about sleight of hand is it has very little to do with hands. And the way that I understand it now that I'm really into it, is it primarily has to do with cover and movement. How are you moving stuff while covering it? And a lot of the times your hand is covering it and your fingers are doing, some of these secret movements, or, they're transferring a break over, they're riffling something in the back to, get to a certain number of cards. So you have all these technical problems, and how do you cover that through the angles and through the physical cover, meaning, your hand in the way of something. So when I look at it that way, you just, you look at what needs to be done, and then it's like, okay, how do I get there with what I have? And that's sort of the way that I look at it now, but it's just a process of, figuring that out.
Yeah. I mean, magic's difficult. Like, let's be honest, and I think, I guess certain people, they're either creative or they're not in certain things, right? And in my head, I'm not creative. I have to give me photography, I'll be creative all you want. But like when it comes to like magic and stuff like that, I feel like I learn the best by watching, right? And doing it that way. And it's even hard watching exactly how someone does it, so watching how someone does it and then trying to create with that in mind, how to do the same type of thing, but totally a different creative way, I'm just not good at. You know what I mean? So it must have been really difficult, fun, and just exhilarating once you're figuring out all these cool moves that you've seen people do. And like you said, you couldn't do it at first, whether it's shuffling, and then eventually you're doing this stuff that you always wanted to do.
So the process is very slow, and it is pretty much based on experimentation. And at the beginning, like I have to sort of give an example because it's so hard to understand. But imagine a world where nobody has ever done any skateboarding tricks, like it doesn't exist, and then somebody's just like, okay, no, but like they don't exist. And somebody's with their skateboard and they're like, oh well, look, I realize that if I put pressure here and then I jump like this, the skateboard comes up. Okay, that's cool, and then I can bring it down in this certain way, and then wait, if I press this part of the skateboard as I'm doing that, it will flip. Maybe I can somehow flip it and then land on it after it's flipped. And you're like, okay, how am I going to do that? And you just try it. You're like, oh my gosh, this works.
That's so true.
That's sort of what it's like. You just try stuff and you're like, okay, let me do it in a performance. Is it going to work? Yeah. Oh, it worked. And it's like, it's just a lot of that. Most of, I don't really try out new moves. In the beginning it was different. In the beginning, everything was new. But you eventually build a foundation. But there's techniques that I need to come up with all the time. You know, I just started practicing a new routine yesterday, and I'm like, okay, you know, in the book that I'm reading, it's like, okay, you need to do some sort of like, you know, 4-card packet switch, and then while you're switching the packet, you're holding a break between the bottom card of this packet and this other packet, and then dropping the card as you switch. I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to do that? You know, and then I just figure out, you know, through my knowledge now what I can do. I'm like, oh, well, I can buckle this off, and then once it's buckled, I can, you know, slip that packet in between this packet as I'm just coming towards the deck, and then, you know, put the whole deck down and lift off that new packet, and it's done quick and smooth. But it's just like, okay, it's just building upon, it's building foundations and then building upon those foundations throughout time. So now it's really, it's not easy, but it's a lot easier than in the beginning. You know, I can sit down and I can come up with techniques to, you know, to do a routine that I'm learning. Whereas in the beginning, it was like, okay, I have to come up with this whole system, you know, and I can't just come up with this whole system out of the blue.
Right. I mean, you could if you're in the Matrix.
There you go, Steve. No, I think it's interesting to see, though, like you said, that creative approach that you have to take to the fact that there is nothing that's been done like this for what you're looking to do. And I think that also kind of comes to play in the fact that you're also artistic. You've created decks of cards. You like to draw and kind of sketch as a hobby as well. And, you know, I think a lot of times we find that people who gravitate towards magic and the creation side of magic are also very creative in other artistic pursuits, just because you have that I don't know what the best word to call it, but you have that kind of that mentality to create things that didn't exist previously instead of just necessarily imitating something that was there before.
I think it's about, you know, and Juan Tamariz talks about it in his books and his lecture, is this idea of an inner world. And we all have this inner world, which is our world, the way that we see the world and we interact with the world, and the things that we love that have turned us into the people that we are throughout what we've experienced in life and what we've absorbed. And it's a question of, are you able to, how rich is that inner world? And then are you willing and able to share that and bring that to life for other people?
Right. And,
you know, that can be through magic, it can be through artwork, it can be through music, it can be through anything. It's just finding out how to share that with people.
Nice. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's interesting to see, though, as well, just like all the amazing work that you've brought then out of your inner world, just based on that analogy there. One of the things I am curious about too is what, you know, being a magician, I think a lot of magicians kind of end up using, you know, being collectors, we talk about all these different types of cards, but a lot of magicians gravitate towards bikes, you know, readily available, inexpensive, reliable decks. What prompted you to want to create your own deck of cards?
So I will say for many years, I used only bicycle cards, and not for any specific reason. Like some people will stick to bicycle because they want to use it for gimmicks or stuff like that. But for me, it was just a question of money. It was a question of I could go to Costco and buy a box of cards, and it would last me a while, and it wouldn't, you know, break the bank. And so for years, I just used bikes, and it's actually funny. This is like, you know, it's been a transition for me to not have my house full of bicycle playing cards.
I took that over for you.
And I've never been into collecting, but I always wanted to have my own deck of playing cards, and it was really hard to do because I did a lot of drawing when I was younger, but I stopped when I got into magic. I kind of switched from drawing to magic, and so I stopped drawing. And so, you know, when I became an adult, I really I hadn't drawn for quite some time, and I was looking for somebody to design a deck of cards for me. And so I was looking and looking, and I just never found the right. I just never made the right connection. There was nobody who could really do what I wanted, and so. And I had this vision of a deck. The deck that I made, this first deck, Hidden Leaves, is not the deck that I wanted to make initially. The first, it was still going to be called the Hidden Leaves, but it was just a totally abstract pattern. It was just lines on the back. But it was going to, when you spread the deck, the lines were continuing. It was almost like, so the way I had designed it is with like a giant scroll. And so it was drawn out on that. And, if you were to spread the deck, you could see the whole pattern as you're spreading.
Okay.
It wasn't like an elaborate pattern, but it was just like a really simple thing. The problem with that is I didn't have the skills in Adobe Illustrator to bring that to life. And that was like a big slap in the face to me, because I'm like, okay. And so I couldn't find the right person. Nobody understood what I wanted to do with it, because, in real life, when you're drawing something, you can shade it. And with playing card artwork, you can shade things. But I wanted to work with, a very limited color, color palette. I just wanted to have one color on the back. And if you're only using one color, because this is, what do they call it? Vector artwork. You have to go in small and do all those details instead of doing, regular shading when you're drawing or you're painting. And for me also, it was a, it was a tactical choice, in that it really does change the tactile experience of feeling the deck. The more colors and ink there is on a card, it changes the weight of it. It changes the feel of it and the handling. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. So I said, let me sit down and try to come up with another pattern. And so there was this old book on gambling that I really liked, just the look of the cover. And I forget what it's called. We did an article. There's a 52 plus Joker magazine for that group of card collectors. And we did a whole article on my deck. And I talk about this book. I forget the name of the title, but it was a cool cover where it was just a hand holding a royal flush.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, this is really cool. And I had seen that image before in Magic and, playing card. But this is like a really cool image. I'm like, what if I could do that? But instead of, regular hand, it's my hand and it's holding a royal flush. And so that was where I started. And then if you see here, if you see, for example, some of the motifs so there's two squares. There's the big square around with the leaves and, the vines and everything. And then there's a pattern sort of in the middle. And that pattern, the whole inner rectangle is based on tally-ho. Tally-ho, the fan back. So tally-ho, the fan back, if you guys remember, it has that big circle, and on that big circle, there's 8 dots. And so a lot of that is just copied from that, but it's in a way that it's like not just like, cut and paste copied. It's like all completely
inspired by it.
And the same thing with, so for example, you can see everything. So if you hold that up, so that circle with the 8 dots, you can recognize it. Also, the leaves that you see going around the outside, those are very similar on the inside. And also, if you look at the 4 circles in the corner, they're I don't know how to describe this. You see you see that little sun, that little fan type thing
Yeah.
in the
Yep.
corners of the circle. It's
Mhm.
interesting because on the tally-ho deck, if you actually put all those together in a reverse order, they make up a sun or a star. And so you had all these images, very iconic. And if you look at the old playing cards, the tally-ho design, I believe, came out in 1885, and I believe the designer of the tally-ho deck, back then we don't know who the designer was. Just like with magic posters, the companies wanted to keep the artists secret so that they couldn't run off and get higher paid commissions, or they couldn't get better gigs. So we don't know who designed these playing cards, just like we don't know who designed a lot of these posters. We may know the company, but we don't know the name of the artists.
Right.
So the designer for Tally-Ho, I believe he also designed several iconic playing card decks from that area, including the famous bicycle back.
Okay.
And that's my belief. I could be totally wrong, but it's just me who's studied the artwork, and I recognize these little different motifs that keep coming up. And I'm like, it's probably the same person, because why would they be doing the exact same, just little details.
Right.
So, I was a huge fan of that artwork, so I wanted to incorporate some of that, but also go my own way. And so that back design, this back design is all, just sort of from my imagination. And the cards themselves, the faces, the court cards are inspired by the good old deck. And actually, truthfully, a lot of the number cards as well. The good old playing cards back in those days. I wish there's all these collectors who know all the serial numbers and everything. Like, I don't know the numbers of the decks, but you can see they're changed throughout time. But I really like that look. So the court cards are directly inspired from them. I redrew them myself, and the reason why I redrew them is they had a process back then when they were making playing cards, and the process was to stamp the colors on the cards, and they would usually work with two colors, red and black. And the reason they only printed in red and black is it was cheaper. They had to do less plates.
Yeah.
And so, but when they would print the cards, all the colors and all the pips, if I show you this, they would be a little bit irregular. So, like, for example,
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
you see how, let me see if I can get it. This heart has a little bit faded off the white. That's how it was in real life with these cards, because they'd be pressing those plates down on those sheets and then moving the next sheet and then pressing down with the plate again to that color on it. So every single deck of cards back then was completely unique in a way, just because it was just, it was done manually. It's not like today, everything's digital. So you print it and it's just perfect. But back then it was like, no, they're pressing that in. So you would have it irregular, especially if it's a card with two colors, like a court card. They're putting the black and then they're putting the red, and maybe it's a little bit off. And so you have, every single one being unique.
That's so cool that you. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's really cool.
Yeah, the cool thing is I mean, obviously when we look at decks and the artwork, it's we I mean, unless we know if it's like a designer like Jackson or Lautrec or like specific designers doing their own deck. But when I think about like magicians who do their own deck, they don't do their own artwork. So I didn't know that you actually did your own artwork for the Hidden Leaves deck. I think the artwork is so cool.
And
and
a lot of it has references though to people who know playing cards. And I talk about all this and some of it has nothing to do with playing cards, but like for example, like when you look, I'll show you this card. I'll sort of just go through some cards, but you see this, and right away you know what that's a reference to. That's tally ho. Everybody knows that. Everybody who's a magician knows that. Regular person sees it and they're like, "Oh, that looks cool," but a magician sees it and they're like, "Oh, that's tally ho." And let's see something else.
I love the jokers in that deck are so sick.
Yeah, the jokers. Let me show you the Ace of Spades. So the Ace of Spades is another nice little. So this Ace of Spades, a lot of the artwork on it is completely my own. But there's a deck. If you look up, I think it's called the Apollo deck, or there's an Apollo Ace of Spades, and their Ace of Spades has this little platform, but it has a statue of Apollo on it. And so I totally just, I did my own thing, but I just used that like little motif of that little platform with my own,
that's cool,
style of artwork and everything.
That's cool.
A lot of little things like that, where if the more you know about playing cards and the more you know about the history of playing cards, the more you'll get out of it.
That's cool.
It is really cool.
Not many people think about that when they're designing decks, So I think that's really cool that you do love playing cards, because you wouldn't have brought all these different things that
I do
involved in such like historical.
I will say it's not perfect. It's not perfect, and it took me a while to get over the fact that it's not perfect. For example, I'll tell you a secret that not many people know, but once you see it, you'll think it's really funny. So
Tell me.
So how big is a playing card?
How big?
Yeah, how big is
about 3.5 by 2.5? Is it?
That's what.
No, 3.5 by 4. Wait, 3.5 by 4.5?
No. You were most.
3.5 by 2.5.
Most people would say 3.5 by 2.5 inches.
Okay.
And that that's pretty correct. However, that's not the actual size of the playing card. It's actually a few millimeters off, like just a fraction. So I was going based on this. So when I was doing all my artwork, I was doing it 3.5 millimeters by 3.5 inches by 2.5 inches. So if you notice on the back design, the white margins are a little bit shorter on the top and the bottom than on the width.
Dude, that's USPCC not knowing how to print.
No, that's me. That's not USPC. So they told me this. So when I sent in my artwork and everything, they're like, it's not actually centered because the size that you made it. And they're like, do you want us to stretch your artwork so that it fits? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. So I made the hard choice of like, either I have to redraw and redesign all of this, which I don't want to do, or I'm going to do it, and it's going to be a little bit imperfect. And honestly, nobody's ever noticed. When I got the decks myself, I looked at it and I was traumatized. I'm like, man, I hate this deck. I'm never going to get used to it. And then like, I don't notice it, but it's just like a psychological thing.
Are you ready? The reason why nobody notices it or cares. So look at every single USPCC deck is the same way. Look at.
So their registration is so off these days that people probably thought it was just their registration job at the cutting.
I don't want to speak bad about the USPC. I like them, but I do know what you're saying.
Right.
And so one of the ways that they've tried to cheat out of that is they told people not to go past certain margins when they print. They want you to print smaller so that they can, actually get it on the card when they print.
Right.
And I always thought that was a stupid thing, and I totally did. I never listened to it. I don't plan on listening to it. And I'm like, you know what? If I really, if they can't, like, I've never had issues with it. I know some people have. I think it's different.
Yeah.
I think the quality is higher when they're doing custom decks. In some cases, not,
I think the funny thing about it though too is for custom decks, you have a specific front and run, you have a contract you have to meet. Whereas with rider backs and things like that, if they consider it doesn't meet their standards, they just turn around and sell it as a seconds deck. So like they have an option to dispose of decks that we as the public would see in a rider back and be like, why is this deck so messed up? It just becomes a seconds and you expect it to be messed up. With a custom deck, you really don't have that availability because it's like, oh, well, hey, 10% of your decks are a little bit off. What would you like us to do about it? No one's going to be like, oh, yeah, we'll pay for you to print another 10% of the decks. Like, it just doesn't work that way. So, yeah, but at the end of the day, though, too, I think, this is something to be said about printing in general. And, we've talked to a lot of people who have printed decks and who have been involved in the printing process in general. Like, it's not easy. If it was easy, we'd be seeing printers popping up left and right who would be, in theory, competing with USPCC, and that's not the case.
No, it's not easy, and it's very expensive for them. It's very expensive for everybody who does these projects. Yeah. I know for me to print my first deck was a really hard thing to do. It cost a lot of money to print a deck. Yeah. And there's so many things that are expensive that you don't realize how expensive it is until you start doing it, like shipping. Like I never knew how expensive it was to ship things until, I started doing it, and like, wow, this is going to bankrupt me. I got to raise the price.
That's so true. It's so true.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. It's so I have a question. What made you go? I mean, obviously it's probably the history behind playing cards, but what made you choose to go with a Pharaoh deck rather than
what do you mean a Pharaoh deck?
Like without the indices, it's called the Pharaoh deck.
Is it called a Pharaoh deck? I don't think it's called a Pharaoh deck.
Yeah.
I really don't think it's called a Pharaoh deck, but
I thought it is. Let me say Pharaoh.
I think Pharaoh's a game. I don't know if they have a special deck for it, but it's an old game.
Yeah, it's like an old. Does anybody know who's watching? Anybody know if it decks without the pips? Because I think it comes originally from like old school when they didn't have.
So my cards don't have any indices, which are the little numbers in the corner. And
it's called the Pharaoh deck. Caitlin said.
Yeah, so basically, it's no different than a normal deck, but at the time when Pharaoh was a popular game, they didn't have indices on the cards, and I think it became more of like a colloquial name at the time, more so than like an official, like, this is a Pharaoh deck. It just happened to be
maybe they kept, I don't know too much about the game Pharaoh. I don't know how to play it, but it might have something to do with the game. But I do know that cards without indices are very old, much older than the game Pharaoh.
Yeah.
And I believe, and from what I've read and I understand, is cards started having the numbers in the corner to make it easier for people who are playing at a table. Instead of having to go through the cards in your hand and look at every single one and remember it, you could then just spread, or you could peek off the table and know what you're holding. Yeah. For Magic, a lot of magicians in the past used cards like this without any indices, and there was no other deck like it. And I looked at it stylistically, and I said, I know that most people who I'm performing for, which is the public, don't have too much experience with cards, and so it's not going to be a huge hindrance for them. in terms of memorizing cards, recognizing cards. And I didn't know this because I had never worked with a card without a deck without indices, but it was a gamble I took, and I said I'm going to do it. And a lot of people thought I was crazy. They said, "How are you going to perform Magic with this?" And I printed it. And to be honest, at the beginning, it was very hard for me to get used to. Personally, because I was so familiar with playing cards, and then I started working with it for the public, just doing the Magic that I usually do, and it's never been an issue for the Magic that I do. Everyone can recognize the cards. Everyone remembers their cards. I have a lot of cards signed in different routines, so they're super easy to recognize. But even bigger cards like tens and stuff, I don't find people have a problem with it, but it was this was a big concern when I was making this deck, and for magicians, how are we going to be able to use it? But honestly, it's really not an issue, and most people think it looks like oh wow, these don't have any numbers on them. They're like and it just starts a conversation, but it's really not. There's so many custom decks that have crazy, weird designs. I really don't see my deck like that. I just see it as a minimalist thing.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it's sharp looking. I have another deck that's the same way. Without it, just really look. I'm a big fan of classy and clean, and I think it looks really clean without the pips and indices. Without the indices and numbers.
One of the great things also is it solves a lot of problems that people have when working with technology. Let's say you're shooting yourself doing a card trick, and you're doing a routine that uses some extra cards. And maybe there's a little discrepancy in the routine. Like maybe the 9 of hearts, magically turns into the 10 of hearts, but nobody's supposed to notice that little discrepancy. On video, if someone were to rewind it and see that, over and over again, they would see, oh, wait, it was a 9. Now that's a 10. What the heck happened over there? With this, because they don't get that information, they don't notice. They don't notice things like that. So you can do a lot of routines on camera that don't have discrepancies that way. There's just little things like that, and it just opens up a lot of magic for me. One of the problems people have, when they're performing, I don't know if you know the routine Reset by Paul Harris, and there's a lot of magicians who have versions of it. It's a classic card trick, but they're doing Elmsley counts and different stuff, and they're having to hide. They're having to hide with their fingers the indices with their hand, and it always looks weird stuff. With this, you don't have to hide it because the information is just processed differently for people. I know a lot of magicians use my deck when performing with mnemonica, and just because if a magician sees certain information when a magician is performing with mnemonica, or some sort of a stack that they know, they will they'll be able to recognize that. Whereas with my deck, they can't process that information. They see the cards, but they don't see the numbers. They don't see the suits. It's just information that's meaningless. So it really allows you to just put the focus on what the effect is. And so, all the secondary information doesn't get processed by the audience.
Interesting.
That's so you don't even think of that. It's so cool to look at it that way.
I didn't think of that when I was designing it. I was just working with it. And I'm like, oh, here I'm doing routines with mnemonica, or that's a well-known stack that most magicians will be able to recognize, and they'll be like, oh, he's just using this. And then I started doing it with my deck, and magicians had no idea what I was doing. I'm like, oh wow, they don't see the stack anymore. They don't see that information. That information just becomes a blur to them. They can't follow it.
Nice. Since we're talking about tricks, can you show us something?
Yeah, let me show you a little something. Do you guys have a deck of cards? And why don't let's give everybody, let's do it in 5 minutes or something. Let's give everybody at home a chance to grab a deck of cards as well,
Cool.
and then we'll do it in like 5 minutes.
Yeah,
All right,
that's perfect.
Yeah. Everyone,
All
go
right,
get a deck of cards.
everybody go grab a deck of cards. Sweet.
I feel like a lot of people have a choice of decks of cards probably sitting around them as we speak. So,
Paul says, "Shoot, I'm cooking." Paul, you better go grab a deck of cards, bro. Put it by the pot.
There you go. So I think one of the interesting kind of things that I've noticed about your decks is the stark contrast between the design style of the back designs on the two. What kind of and I think, a lot of times with designers, especially as we get familiar with more decks from a designer, you can tell someone's style from them. And without seeing the courts or the faces of the cards that you designed, I don't know if that would be as readily accessible to someone who had just seen these and know your style. What really caused you to shift so drastically in your style with the Emanations deck?
So, I had done my first deck, Hidden Leaves, and it was really exciting to me because it's like, oh, I had done it, and I was thinking, what am I going to do next? A lot of people have been asking me for a red version, which I really am planning on doing one. It's just, it's so funny. The market has changed. So I'm like, oh, I want to do a red deck, but I want to have a special edition, and I want to, do this and this.
Funny, yeah.
And it adds so much work that I haven't gotten around to it. But for a second deck, I was like, you know what? Let me see. I did Hidden Leaves. People really liked it. Let me see if I can do something else, something totally different. And I did a deck called Emanations, and the idea was, I don't know if you have my deck. Where's my deck?
I have it in the other room. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, grab it so that people can see it. I have it. I just don't have it right here.
It happens. Steve has lots of decks around him. I knew he would have that one close. So,
but I started a magic website called Before Magic, and what I was using on the website as sort of like a logo, it was an old symbol that I found on a Charles T. Jordan book, and I had no idea what it was. And I eventually, as I was making the deck, I realized it was his monogram. It was his signature. So if you look at the design of the Emanations, that back design, if you look at it up close, you can see the letters C, T, and J, which I didn't know that, and that's his initials. I didn't know what that was for years. Looking at it, I had those books on my shelf, and for me, it looked like an old, like, tribal mask, like something that you would see like in some sort of African artwork or something like that. And it just reminded me of, like, sort of ancient coat of arms, and the coat of arms were always very simplistic in colors, just, red, black, white, like very medieval type. And I'm like, let me try to come up with something. So I came up with many different designs, but I like the idea of having lines go through, but the lines are not just regular lines. It's weird to explain it because it gets really abstract. Like, you would think that the lines are just going down, but if you really look at the lines from down to up, you can see whenever they're hidden for a fraction, they might change in terms of where the red line starts, where the white line starts. It might reverse. It might do, something weird. And so the idea for me behind the deck was this name Emanations, which are things that are abstract, but they're real and they're tangible, but we don't really see them. And so I just like the idea of having, I don't know, these things that you can see, and then they change when you don't see them. But
That's true.
I don't know. It's just this weird thing. And I reused a lot of the artwork from Hidden Leaves.
Okay.
And at first I was going to do totally different court cards, but then I really, I've been a fan of the illusionist ghost deck for a very long time. And to be honest, I will say this: I really like it, and I really don't like certain aspects of it.
Of the courts?
No, just everything. No, from the illusionist, the ghost deck.
Oh, okay.
But I like the spiritual concept of it, where it's just colors removed, and that's what I wanted to do with this deck. I didn't want to go as far as them, but I wanted to do it for the court card. So I just wanted to and it just makes it so different than the regular, the way that you see them in Hidden Leaves. And I don't know, I just thought it was very interesting to me. And I just wanted to keep it super simplistic and remove elements, just keep removing things. And
I love how big. I'm actually in the process of creating a deck right now, and I love how big the courts are. I love how it takes up the whole entire face, and that's what I'm doing in my deck as well. I just think that's so cool. I think it captivates me.
Honestly, it's amazing. I honestly love looking at my court cards because of that.
Right.
Because they're so big, and you can really just they're totally different. When you have the indexes, it really, you have to make everything smaller. You have to make even my pips and stuff. My pips are, I believe, slightly bigger than regular pips on regular playing cards, just because
definitely, for sure.
And I really bring them into the corner. I don't hide them away all into the middle and try to bunch it up. I spread them out. I make them big. And I just like that. I really just like it.
I dig it too.
It almost has much more of a, I don't know, it's like a much more artistic look to it. It doesn't look printed. It looks very hand-drawn, very, relatable, but also kind of antique in a cool way. I definitely dig chords that kind of have that more, I don't want to say rough look to it, but not digital print finished. I think nowadays people want things that are very laser edged and clean, and having that old feel to it just brings back some of the nostalgia of older decks.
And one thing that I will have to say, another thing that I did, which is not revolutionary, but you don't see it on a lot of playing cards, I printed on what they call the ivory finish, the smooth finish, instead of the, what do you call it? The air cushion, the linen finish. Which gives a texture to the card. And to be honest, you can work with both, but for me, the look of that smooth finish, and for me also the feeling, is just better. And I just love that idea where you can, if you wanted to, you could take a close-up photo of one of my playing cards, and you don't have those little dimples in the cards that you would get on, and we see this when somebody does a scan of playing cards, you can see those little lines on the air cushion finish decks because they have a pattern in it.
Let's see if it works. Probably
not.
It's not a
Mac. Yeah.
It's not a macro lens. It's not going to work.
Yeah. nice try though. So and that's an interesting thing because I think a lot of nowadays people are not necessarily comfortable initially with a smooth finish deck out of the box, and I think
people are afraid of things that are new, and for me, I don't get it. I've worked. I get decks all the time. I back decks on Kickstarter. People give me decks. I buy decks. There's some decks that most of the decks that I get, I'll just use for practice. It depends. It depends. But there's certain decks that are just too out there in terms of the artwork that I can't perform for them. Like I can't use them professionally. Like it just causes too many problems for me. But I'm not afraid to, sit down and work with them. But I swear, for most people, there's like a real fear. Oh, what am I supposed to do with the cards? They don't have any numbers. They're smooth. It's like, guys, like, what's gonna happen? Just try it out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so true. And Tyler and I have talked about this with other magicians and or just other people in the community. It's like I feel like you said, you buy cards, you get cards free, and a lot of people collect cards or whatever. But I feel like most magicians can perform with any deck. They don't care, which is why most of them use bikes, because it's a super cheap. They can blow through them. They can write on every card. It doesn't matter. It's like $3 a deck, whatever it is. But I think people just don't like change, right? They don't even want to try because they're just so used to one thing, whether it's a bike deck or.
But there's and one of the things I told one of my friends who's a professional magician, and he uses is it called Aristocrats?
Aristocrat, yeah.
He uses those a lot. It's a beautiful deck, and he has some, but he's like, yeah, they're hard to get, and I can't use them with certain gimmicks. And I told him, how many decks do you use a year? Oh, I use a lot of decks because I'm giving them out. I'm working, and I told him, why don't you just print them? You can print them. You can contact USPC. You can print. You can print bicycles. You can print tally-ho. You can print all these designs that they own, and you can print them to your specifications. So if now you wanted to have tally-hos that were smooth and, on a B stock, and you wanted them crushed, and you wanted to have like an extra card that's a gimmick or, whatever you want, you could literally have that made and just work with it, professionally. And the cost of it is a lot cheaper at the end of the day in terms of, buying them. And you have your own, maybe you even put your name on the tally-ho box, whatever you want. You have your own deck, even without, or bicycle deck or anything. Imagine, let's say you work with bicycle cards a lot, but you're using a regular bicycle deck. It's made custom by USPC for you. Maybe you have a joker that has your name or your contact info on it. The same thing with the box. Boom, you can then hand those out to clients or whatever, and it costs you virtually at the end of the day the same as buying them from Costco or buying them, wherever. Obviously, you have to buy a lot more all at once, but you have something that it has just been upgraded.
That's so true.
And it's gonna last too. It's not like if you buy 1,000 decks of cards, they're gonna go bad in a year. Like you now have enough cards, hopefully for several years in front of you, and in 10 years, that $3 deck of bikes. Geez, bike of decks. That $3 deck of bikes could now be $3.50, and you in theory actually saved yourself money, even though it's a larger upfront cost.
Exactly. So it all depends on what it is that you want to do, how much money you have saved away. But I think for anybody working professionally, it's a great idea. Honestly, it's a great idea. One of the things that I would like to do is I would love to make a nicer version of tally-hos eventually. Some of the things would change in terms of the design. You would not be able to notice. So one of the funniest things, I keep getting off on these tangents, but it's fine. One of the funniest things, so if you look at the old bicycle playing cards, if you look at the old tally-hos, they look almost the same, but they had to be redrawn by different artists because the plates would get old, and then they had to, hire somebody to redraw the design. And every single time the design was redrawn, it was redrawn by a worst artist, I swear. So the bicycle cards that we have now don't look as good as the bicycle cards that they had 100 years ago. It's the same design. It's just redrawn by somebody who's not as good. Like it's crazy when you see them and they're like, oh, these are really cool. I would love to do a series of old school playing cards like that, where you just look at it and you're like, oh yeah, that's tally-ho, that's a bicycle deck, but it's just like, I guess a superior version of it.
Yeah. I'm a big fan, actually, of the Arco courts more than the bicycles. I think the Arco courts are really, really sharp. Yeah, I'm a big fan of those.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the cool things about it. People do really, as you get more into cards, you do get those personal preferences for Arco courts versus other types of courts and those little touches. So, like you said, going to customize your deck makes you, in theory, I think being comfortable with the tools that you use makes you more confident in it as well. So something as simple as that just can have a major impact when you're performing even, and you don't even think about it when you're using regular bikes.
It does. And I would say when you're working, you always want to work with what you're familiar with. If somebody just hands me a deck, or I don't have my own deck for whatever reason, somebody hands me a deck and I'm doing Magic, I don't feel as comfortable. I'll probably do most of the same routines, but I'll probably be a little bit, more wary when I'm doing certain techniques, because I don't know how the cards are going to bend in a certain way. Or I'm going to take less chances. I'm going to be more, I'm going to be slower in some ways.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know the tool. This is a foreign object you just handed me.
Right. So before we forget, it's been 5 minutes.
Okay.
Let's do a trick.
Let's do a trick here.
Are we going to ruin any cards, or?
No, we're not going to ruin any cards.
Okay.
Let me take my cards out, and then everyone can do the same. So what everybody is going to need is a deck of cards, and from that deck, I want you to take out 5 black cards and 5 red cards.
All right, 5 black cards, 5 red cards.
And let me angle this down.
I literally picked the worst deck because right now I have green and blue cards.
So
I have Kate's deck, Under the Skin.
There you go.
There you go, Kate.
So everybody take your red cards and your black cards, 5 of each. And
It doesn't matter which one, or just 5? It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter which ones.
Okay.
But I prefer to use, all court cards or all high cards, just because there's more contrast.
Okay. So is that a hint? Use more court cards?
5 red and 5 black.
All right.
5 red and 5 black. All right. Got it.
Now turn them face down, and they're in 2 separate piles.
Okay.
On it.
And now you're going to mix them one by one. And the way that you're going to do that is you're going to take one of the cards from the left and put it into the middle. Then one of the cards from the right into the middle. On top, one from the left, one from the right. Red and black, and red and black, and red and black. And now the card should be mixed. Red, black, red, black, red, black.
Okay.
The next thing that we're going to do, well, I hope so too. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to cut and complete the cut anywhere you want. It can be 1 card, it can be 2 cards, 3 cards in the middle, however many you want.
Okay.
Now, everyone's going to just spread out their cards a little bit. And you're going to grab the top 2 cards, grab the top 2 cards together and turn them over together and put them back on top. And square.
Okay.
All right.
And now we cut and we complete the cut. And again, we're going to spread the cards. We're going to grab the top 2 cards together, turn them over together, and put them back on top, and cut and complete the cut. Now, I want you to think of either one of the reds or one of the blacks.
That are in this deck?
No, just the color, red or black.
Oh, okay.
Now, if you're thinking of the red, and for everybody who's watching this, if you're thinking of red, don't do anything right now. If you're thinking of black, though, grab the top 4 cards together, turn them over, and put them back on top and square.
Okay.
And so what were you thinking of, Steve?
I was thinking of black.
And you turned over the 4 cards?
Yep.
And Tyler, you're thinking of red, right?
I am.
Now, what you're going to do is you're going to cut wherever you want and complete the cut. And now you're going to spread, grab the top 2 cards together, turn them over, and put them back on top and square.
Okay.
Fair? And now one more cut and complete the cut. And so I think everybody at home should have a different situation because everyone's cutting in a different place and everything, thinking of different color. The cards are mixed. Some cards face up, some cards face down. Take one card from the top. It doesn't matter if it's face up or face down. Put it down to the left.
Okay.
All right.
Take one card and put it down to the right. The same thing. One to the left and one to the right. Left and right. And you keep doing this with all the cards, not turning them over, just leaving them in the direction that they are. Now you should have 2 piles with cards face up and cards face down. Pick up one of the piles, whichever you want. Pick up one of the piles now.
No.
Okay. I'm scared. Yeah, I'm scared.
No, I'm not doing this shit. Go ahead.
You picked up one?
Yeah.
Do we do it doesn't matter, right? Left or right?
No, just pick up one.
Okay, got it.
Turn it over and put it on the table.
Okay.
All right.
Now pick up either the same pile or the other pile
Okay.
and put it on top of the pile that's on the table.
Okay.
And so we should have cards that were mixed face up, cards mixed face down, red, black, red, black, red, black. And we're going to try this. Everybody now think of your color. Think of your color. Think of your color, the color that you were concentrating on. I'm thinking of my color. When I think about my color, all those cards are going to separate from the other color. All the reds are going to separate from the black. And all the reds, for me, are going to turn face up, and all the black cards are going to turn face down. Now, I didn't do anything to these cards. All I do is I spread, and now I should have 1, 2, 3,
Get out of here.
5 cards, all red, all face up. And over here, I have 5 cards face down, and they're all the blacks. And now check your hands. See if this. And you were thinking, Steve. You were thinking of Fred. You were thinking of black.
Yep.
And what cards do you have face up?
Black.
You have all the blacks face up, and every single card that's face down is a red.
Yep.
And Tyler, you spread too. You have all the reds and the blacks separated as well.
Yeah. so,
And everybody at home, if you guys comment, we'll be able to see. It should work for everybody.
the comments we've seen so far are Mahdi is dope and sorcery. So I'm guessing it worked.
So cool.
I'm like, this is so awesome. That was so awesome. I mean,
That's
like,
cool.
again, like I have terrible color choices here, but those are all the reds. So yeah, that was nicely done.
That was dope. Good job, dude.
That's a piece of magic that when I read it in a magic book years and years ago, and I was just following the directions, it totally fooled me, and I loved it, and I've been doing it ever since. And I've done it over the radio, and now I'm doing it over Zoom, and it's just so much fun.
Yeah,
See,
I mean, tricks. Go ahead, Todd.
I was gonna say the interactivity of it as well makes it so awesome because like when you say, okay, listen, you can cut it wherever you want and complete the cut. And like, I know my deck now looks different than everyone else's, but for us all to end up in the same situation adds such like an awesome impact to it. Like, it's so cool.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. And I think, we're right now working, with a new situation. A lot of people are just doing stuff online. And for me at first, I really didn't like it. I didn't like, the technology and doing everything. But then I realized, what is it? what's going on? And there's so much that we can get out of the interactivity. So for me, I just focus on that with the magic that I'm doing nowadays. And some of it is stuff that you can see on a screen, but I love that I can do something and it's happening for you in your homes. Steve, where are you right now? What city are you in?
California. Well, city, I'm in Petaluma.
So you're a 3-hour difference in terms of a time zone. You're 4,000 miles away. Yeah. And you have a card trick that, you have things happening in your hands. And that's what I love. It's just so much fun.
And I'm doing it myself. You're not touching the cards.
Yeah.
Well, allegedly.
I mean, listen, if you traveled in time 3 hours back to set up Steve's cards, I'm even more impressed now than I was 5 minutes ago. But no, I love these sort of like tricks. And I think, that a very good question. And I think that brings up a great kind of question there is, how have you found the impact of the whole pandemic on performing magic? And maybe not so much in the sense of having to transfer to Zoom, but what was that initial kind of reaction for you when you were like, oh no, I can't go out and perform magic in person with people?
I think, like a lot of people, I was really just shocked. And I didn't know how long this thing is going to last. And then it became more and more clear that there was no real end in sight. So I just, was sort of in a fog for a while. And you try to stay focused. You try to, keep yourself busy. But it's really hard when your whole routine is sort of thrown out the window. And so for a while, it was really hard for me to focus on things. I was just, literally just days going by, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is really boring. I can't leave my house and everything. Yeah. And now, we have much looser restrictions. So you can go out, and we know a lot more about the situation. And so I feel more positive and more productive because of that. Because now, even though I don't have complete normalcy, I still have some normalcy. I can go to the park. I can go, I can go out to, we have these patios open if you want to eat at a restaurant. You can't eat inside, but you can, like we understand now how to avoid getting sick and all that stuff. So we can sort of operate in this world intelligently. At the beginning, I couldn't even see my own family because I was worried. Oh no, am I good? You're worried about those things. Whereas now, it's like, for me at least, it's more relaxed, and because of that, I have more normalcy.
Yeah, I mean, some people are still a little too relaxed, but that's another different. That's a whole different story. But yeah, no, it's true. I think things are slowly getting back to normal, or
it's very slow, but there's and also one of the great things is people also accepted going virtual. It was a very hard thing at first, and I can tell you, it's a very hard thing. Years ago, doing virtual events, I would do virtual events with magicians in terms of courses and stuff, where magicians would teach other magicians over the internet, over webcam. And I started this many years ago. I would say, I can't remember the year, maybe 5 years ago. It was a very weird concept for people. It was very hard to convince people. Why are you going to pay to learn something live over webcam? Whereas now, people have sort of accepted it. We're all on our webcams. We're all, doing everything that way. Kids are going to school that way, and people are watching shows. I've watched shows streaming. I've paid to see shows streaming live, and it's a thing that people are accepting. So, which is good for us because it opens up new opportunities for what we're doing as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I saw there's like a couple memes that I've seen, or even from like friends who are introverts. They're like, oh my God, it's so great. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to hang out with people. I could just see them on like Zoom, and then that's it. I don't, it's not you're not hanging out with them. And there's I mean, not that this has anything to do with anything, but there's a meme that one of my friends put out, and she's a female, and the meme says, "These masks are great because I haven't been told once to smile by a guy." You know, so it's like, because guys always like, "Why don't you smile?" You know, it's like obviously a whole nother topic, but it's just funny that people are.
You can see if somebody's smiling with their eyes, though. A lot of the smile is, with the face. You can, but I would say you can, you get used to seeing people with the masks and seeing their facial reaction and stuff like that. It takes a little while to get used to it, but it's not, impossible to read people.
No, for sure. And I think that's the difference between like intuitive and most guys. There's a big difference. You have intuitive people and then most guys. And
now it doesn't matter as much if you forget to brush your teeth before you go out.
Now, it doesn't matter, but now we have to breathe in our own breath. That's where all the people realize they have to brush their teeth. They're like, "Oh, dang, this is what I smell like."
There you go. So I think that threw me off a little bit for sure. Just because some days it's like, all right, I gotta get on work real quick. I'll shower later. So
Tyler showers before he goes on Zoom. It's great.
I do sometimes. I mean, I literally showered for this show just because I had to make sure that I didn't look grimy from the day. But how have you found that other magicians within the community, like, has there been a lot of communication between magicians in general being like, "Oh yeah, guys, like, how are you finding the reaction to Zoom shows and things like that? How are you finding the response to lectures online, or is it still kind of segmented?" Because I think if nothing else, the pandemic has probably brought a lot of communities together to figure out how to overcome the issues that have been created by it.
Yeah, I think people just have been reaching out to more people. I've had friends invite me to different Zooms, and there's a bunch of magicians there, and we just all talk. And it's something that I ordinarily wouldn't do, just because but now everyone's at home, and you don't have, you can't just go to a convention. You can't just go to your local magic shop or your club. So everyone's online now. So, it's very fun because of that. And you realize that really everyone's just a click away. Everyone's just a click away. And, so there's a lot of positive things happening because of that. But, it's also, there's a lot of people feeling very lonely and depressed at the same time. So it's just, making the most of the technology and the tools and trying to just use them for positive things. And in terms of the shows, I was late to the whole Zoom thing, and I know magicians who don't want to do anything over Zoom. I was reluctant to do it, but now I realize that we won't have a lot of live events in the near future. So I'm like, okay, this is the only way for me to do magic for people. So I kind of have to do it this way for however long this lasts. And so it is fun. Some people were very prepared. There's a magician, Helder Guimarães, who did a show called, I think it's called The Present, which is all through Zoom, and it's been very successful, and I've heard great things about. And I also know other people who are doing a lot of gigs over Zoom. I think it's a totally different animal than performing live. So, but you learn it. You learn it through doing it, and you learn, what that attention span is like, how to keep that engagement up, and ultimately, how to make it into a worthwhile thing. How do you why should people watch you live? Why don't they just watch the replay? Why don't they just watch this video later? These are all things that you think that you have to, you're confronted with, and you have to, come up with creative solutions. And probably it all comes down to engagement and participation. How do you bring people in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I definitely do think that is a tough thing because, like you said, how do you get people to not watch the replay? Well, I think a lot of people don't make the connection of if you're not there in the live, the interaction isn't there, which means the replay is surely not going to be that engaging. And so you have to have live engagement to then get post engagement, which I think is really just interesting to see across the board. I think a lot of people have found that things have become more flexible with their timing now that they're home all the time. You can do laundry anytime you want now. You can eat lunch at 2:00 instead of noon because your fridge is right around the corner, things like that. But it's interesting to hear, though, that there are still aspects that flexibility isn't necessarily there.
No,
unfortunately, the fridge is right around the corner.
It's really all about what that experience is like. And there's certain YouTubers and stuff like that I'll watch live, and not always, because it's hard to watch things live always, but I can tell you from experience, it's a completely different experience watching it live, looking at the live chat, being able to throw in comments, and do that rather than watching it later. And it's you might just put it on the background and do something else. Whereas when it's live, you're watching it. You're watching the live comments. Whereas if it's not live and you don't need to be watching it, maybe somebody just puts it on in the background while they're cooking or they're cleaning the house.
Yeah, and now we have TikTok. Are you on TikTok?
Oh man, I created an account. Look, I'm so late to this game. I don't know what's going on. I got on TikTok and I'm like, I'm actually afraid of what I've seen. Like I don't know what I'm looking at.
I mean, all you have to do on there is go on and dance. You'll be good, man.
Yeah, if I went on and danced, it would be more popular than anything I've ever done on social media.
Hey, dude, I would totally watch you dance on there. Are you kidding me?
Well, and even from like the magic point of view, I think it's such a different way to approach magic as well. And I think that's where gimmick and very visual based magic excels, because you can do it quickly. When you only have a minute to perform a trick, a lot of the back and forth and a lot of the interactive requirement just isn't there. So like if you have, I'm trying to think of one I've seen recently, actually there's a really good one that I saw from a friend of mine on Instagram where you turn a like icebreakers mince container into a hockey puck. And like, it's a very visual, it's easy to, it's very easy to do. It's very visual. And it's something that you can do without too much, with zero audience interaction, but still get the engagement, quote unquote, after the fact. And that's where like TikTok excels, because you definitely like even the trick we did here, which for all intents and purposes is probably a relatively easy trick to perform. You probably couldn't do it as well in a minute. And without actual engagement, it would just be you playing with some cards in front of you. So
exactly. So that's, what I like about TikTok, what I like about TikTok is what you're saying. It's very short, and you can do some great stuff in magic. One of my favorite guys that I love to watch, Eric Jones, is on there, and he's doing very well. And it's just very fascinating to watch certain people do stuff. But I think at the end of the day, I don't think it can be an end goal in terms of magic. I think you can use it as like a funnel. And it's like, oh, here's some cool, you see this short, 15-second, 1-minute clip. And then they also find out that you have a YouTube channel or, something like that. And then they can actually see, like, they can see more,
Yeah, for sure.
You're very limited with what you can do in a minute. A minute is like really short.
It's like, I mean, with all puns aside, it's like just really small gimmicky stuff. I mean,
some of it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can do with technique. It's just you can't really get into any real routines. It's just like quick, like flashy stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like Are they doing monetizing on TikTok yet? They are, right?
Not really, not in a way
yet.
that you can do from videos yet. So that also makes it difficult. But, like Maddie said, the way to do it is you funnel. You get people who, and you figure just based on social media metrics in general, if you have 1 million people who follow you on TikTok, being able to get 1% of those to convert to another platform for you is still a significant amount of people. So being able to build quick audiences with simple 15-second videos and build a sizable audience is actually a great thing, because to be able to build the same size audience that you convert from TikTok to, say, Instagram would take you months. And no one wants, I think especially with the platforms being different, you can go and post 30 to 50 videos on TikTok a day and people eat it up. If you try to post 30 to 50 things on Instagram every day, people would be blocking you because they'd be so fed up with their feed just being your pictures. So that ability to interact differently and create quick snippets to send up all over the course of the day and garner, large audience visibility and then convert it, 1% even. That's something.
It's really like, I just started watching a lot of new YouTube videos where people are doing, that I guess it's not an app, it's a website called Omegle or something. Yeah, so obviously we all know it used to be used, or still is used, for some like pretty crazy stuff, right? But a lot of musicians nowadays are using Omegle on their YouTube channels, where they're amazing pianists, like some guy named Marcus Veltri is doing it, and his YouTube videos are getting like millions of views just because he's randomly playing for people on Omegle. Obviously every once in a while he sees someone having a little fun, but but he totally feeds into it and plays them like circus music or something until they skip him. But I think it'd be cool if you wanted to just like perform magic for people and make people smile some days, just to bump up your YouTube and get more followers. It's always another opportunity for technology these days.
Which there actually is a up and coming magician who just created her YouTube channel who is doing exactly that with Omegle, because show up and she's basically just like, you want to see a magic trick? And people are like, yeah. And it's all, if nothing else, it's it's really like a risk-free way in a sense to practice new tricks on strangers. And if it doesn't work, on to the next one, It's interesting.
Literally on to the next one.
So I definitely think there's actually, so one of the questions I have going back to playing cards, just because I feel like it was, we took a big bit of a tangent there. Is there a third deck in the works other than obviously, different color variations of the hidden leaves that you think you want to kind of create along the lines of the, whether it be, in the style of emanations, in the style of hidden leaves, or something completely new?
No, I want to do something completely new. I want to make a deck. I want to do a Matthew Buchinger deck, who is he's a magician who was alive hundreds of years ago, and he's the only other magician who was born without any hands or feet, like me. And he also did a lot of artwork and stuff like that. And so I don't have the whole deck, but I have portions of the deck already in mind. I know how some of it is going to look. It's just a matter of sitting down and designing it and, figuring out the rest of the deck. It's one of those things where it's like, once you start a deck, it's a very frustrating experience because you need to have the vision of the complete deck. Because once you start working on it, and like, okay, what is the Joker going to be? What is this going to be? What are the court cards going to be? And because you eventually have to, do that part of the deck. And the more of a vision that you have before you start, it's just easier. Whereas if you only have like one idea for the deck and you don't know how the rest of the deck is going to be, it's kind of crazy to start that deck because it's like, you don't have an edge. It's It's like if you have an idea for a song and you only have the beginning, and you're like, I don't know what the rest of the song is. I only have a line. Like, what am I gonna do? So
That's true. Yeah.
no, but I do have a lot of ideas. Things are coming. I also want to make a what do they call it? The little cardistry trainers.
Trainers.
Yeah, trainers.
You got it. They call it cottage trainers.
What are the ones made by Chase Duncan called? Squids.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, anyways, I want to do stuff like that. I have some ideas for I love the cardistry community. I love what those guys are doing, and I love all the unique stuff that they're doing. And I'm not really into cardistry. I'm on the fringes of that subculture. I just peek in every once in a while, check out what's going on, but I'm not like in it. But I love what they're doing, and I just think there's so much there in terms of what they're doing for playing cards and designs, and I love branching out and doing different stuff. But I do. The question is, do I have a third deck that I'm working on actively? No, but I have things brewing in my mind.
Nice.
Yeah.
But realistically, though, probably the next deck that's going to come is the red Hidden Leaves, because many people have been asking me for those, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do them. They're like, when? And I'm like, oh, man, guys.
You should put the red on back, like on hold, and like do a purple or a silver or something.
Or a green.
I never, it's so hard. So when I did Hidden Leaves, I just used the blue on, I used the blue and the red that you have on Bicycle.
Yeah.
And that wasn't my original idea. And this is one of the hardest parts about playing cards is the coloring. I'm like OCD. So when you color something, the color that you see on a screen or in a program is totally different than real life. And so playing cards they print them on Pantone ink, which is a brand of paint. If it's a brand of ink or paint, I'm not too sure what you would call it. And it looks different depending on the types of paper that it's printed on. And you really have no idea how the color looks unless you see it in person. So you have to go out and either buy or find these color wheels that the company sells. And these are these booklets of like color swatches. Yeah. And these booklets are really expensive. Like, I think it costs like $500 for the basic one. So I'm like, I'm not going to buy this. Let me go find this. I had to go to a print shop, and I'm looking at all these colors. And then I wanted to do like a specific blue. And then I'm like, and then I'm talking to, the people at USPC, and I'm like, well, is it going to look like this when it's printed? And they're like, well, it depends. It could be a little bit different because of the paper that we're using. And I'm like, what? You guys don't know, like it. And so like colors are really difficult. Colors are really difficult, honestly. I'm not a big fan of a lot of the yellows I see on playing cards. Like a lot of the yellows that you see on decks are really ugly, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And these are really hard things to find out because, like,
I literally have too many decks of cards sitting next to me. But there you go. Pick a color.
I think we all do. That's the problem.
No, but it's like it just looks so different on the computer screen, and it doesn't matter. You can have it set on brightness 100, whatever. It's totally different. It's totally different when you print it. So, I would love to do different colors of Hidden Leaves. I'm just like paranoid about colors, though.
That's understandable.
What does this stand for?
That's a secret. That's a secret. There's a lot of secrets in the artwork that I didn't tell people, and I just sort of want people to be able to figure it out if they can.
Are there clues in the deck that would allow someone to figure it out?
No.
So, Steve, go pick up every biography you can on Mahdi, and we'll figure this out. If I go to before
Maybe
Mel,
when they have to show it, he'll tell us.
No, but
Maybe.
that's a beautiful thing because it's like I hate when somebody, but there's lots of things that people have figured out and they've contacted me privately. They're like, oh, hey, I noticed this. And I love when I get those emails or when I get those messages from people because it's like, I love the idea that people can look at stuff and not know what it is and not just have the answer, not just have the answer. And I just find that there's so little mystery in our world today. And it's like, okay, I can make something and I don't need to tell you what it is. And it's not because it's like, I want to bother people or something like that. It's just really, I think it's interesting if people, it's like a treasure hunt and you're like, I don't know where to start. And that's okay to not know where to start.
Yeah, no, it's true.
I mean, think about those the books that people sell these days where someone goes out and they bury a treasure somewhere in the wilderness and people sell these like books where it's a treasure hunt book. I think people do love that.
What is it called? It's called what is it called?
There's two of them that were famous. One of them was oh man.
No, the name like what that's called to like go around. There's like apps that can do
Scavenger
it.
hunt.
No. It's
Oh, geocaching. That's not what I'm talking about.
That's it. That's what I was thinking.
So no, there were two authors in the past like couple decades where they actually printed books, and one of them was a poem, and the guy hid like hundreds of thousands of dollars of gemstones and gold somewhere in the U.S. wilderness, and based on these poems, you had to figure out where it was. And I think someone actually just found the cache of treasure like a couple months ago, which was interesting because it was printed in like 1987. And then the other one was I want to say it was like.
Brad says he has that book.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but the other one is like someone buried gemstones, 10 or 12 gemstones across the U.S. in different cities, and based on a painting, you had to figure out what city it was and the location and all this, which was, I think in general, people like that. As much as people may get frustrated with things like that, people like mystery. By nature.
When David Blaine put out his book, Mysterious Stranger, he worked with a puzzle person like that who, and they hid I don't know what they hid, but I think the prize was like $100,000 or something like that. And there were all these codes in the photos and these little things in the book, and people had to figure it out. And somebody figured it out. I have the book. I was never able to figure it out. I don't even figure out a single clue in the book. But I think it's really cool that it's in there and somebody was able to figure it out. It's not going to be me, but somebody can do it. And I just love that kind of stuff, that it exists. Even if I don't have the skill set to be able to interact with it, I love that it exists and somebody can get that joy out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
It really is. That's so cool.
Yeah. It just adds so much more to whatever it is, whether it's a deck and, a painting or a book. That I actually didn't Cam put some hidden scavenger hunt in his half brick box?
Yeah, we saw it in the OPC half brick box. Theory 11 did it with the Neil Patrick Harris deck, as well as I believe the Darren Brown deck. There have been a lot of them over time, which I think is really cool that, the affinity between people who enjoy cards and people who enjoy puzzles is so close, Yeah.
Maybe we should send Chris Ramsey on the search for those gems.
That would be.
We'll see how good he really is.
Yeah. Dude, it's crazy how much people are willing to go through for a puzzle. And I think, it's funny. I've seen clearly too many documentaries on these things, but people are like, yeah, it's about the hunt. Like, cool, you get something at the end, but it's about the hunt. And I think that's so pure in a way. And I think, being able to include those secrets in your deck too probably is satisfying. Yeah.
And, it's just, I think a lot of artists historically have hidden stuff in their artwork, and maybe they'll hide themselves in it. They'll put their face or something, and they'll never tell anyone. And then you'll have like historians hundreds of years later and be like, "Hey, look at this. And it's just cool. I don't know when people are going to find stuff out, if they're going to find it out, but it's like, it's cool that it exists.
Yeah. The name of the book is The Secret, A Treasure Hunt by Byron Price. We'll have to get it. There, you wanna do that question? You wanna do that question, Tyler?
So we actually had two things I wanted to cover here first. The first one is, because we talked about this earlier and then completely forgot, was sniffing a deck of cards for Stu. So I know now that everyone went out and got decks of cards handy, I feel like we should have a group sniff. So
let's do it.
Yeah, even though I'm gonna switch it up here and I'm gonna open something completely different.
I'm gonna sniff Mahdi right here. Mahdi, I'm gonna sniff you, Mahdi.
I'm a little alarmed, honestly. I know what a deck of cards smells like, but I'm not smelling anything. I have a loss of sense of smell. I might have coronavirus.
Let's hope not.
Don't say that.
Let's just hope that the cards have kind of aired themselves out recently. Yeah, and it's funny because, we talked about this earlier. There definitely is a distinct smell difference between USPCC and Cardamundi and a lot of the other designers. And I just sniffed a deck from Expert, and I was like, ooh, very chemical.
Yeah.
It all depends on where you're getting it from and where it's stored and all these things.
Nah.
I don't like it. I don't like smelly cards. I honestly, I don't. I just like, and it's one of the reasons why I like the USPC cards. Like, they don't have a smell to them. They're
it's
just
definitely
very neutral.
Yeah, they have. I mean, it's different. It's based on glue and paper and all that stuff, right?
Well, yeah, the glue, the paper, the atmosphere that they were cut in, the day, like all the temperature, all that not only impacts the handling of the cards, but it can impact the smell of it and how quickly it permeates out and all that.
Yeah.
So, the question we did have to ask there was, Paul actually wanted to know, if you had your choice of either, would you rather have a personal chef or a private jet?
Are these free or I have to pay for them? Because
we'll say free. So yeah, no questions asked. You have to pick one. Which one would you pick?
Do I have to pay for the gas on the private jet?
You don't have to pay for anything.
Yeah, we'll say all expenses included.
All inclusive.
Definitely the jet.
Okay, there you go. Right on. Paul, there's your answer. I feel like Paul just likes to know whether or not people like planes.
I can sell the jet. I can't sell the chef.
That's true. That's true.
Very true. But food is so good. I mean, it would literally Gordon Ramsay was your chef, though. Like someone who has
that guy's obnoxious.
I'd be intimidated. I'd be very afraid.
I'd be like, you know what? I'd love to have Gordon Ramsay as my chef just for one meal, so I could tell him, "Oh, this sucks," and just like go off on him.
Steve, you're terrible.
I know. What can I say?
He's probably a very nice guy.
He probably is.
I think a lot of it is for TV. I think a lot of it is for TV.
You know what? Whatchamacallit? Caitlin says that you can sell the food from the chef as well.
Yeah. Well, the question is, do I want to have a restaurant or do I want to have a jet?
I look at it this way. If you sell the jet, then you could just hire a chef.
Well, I don't think I can afford either a chef or a jet. So, let's say I have the jet. I don't even think I can afford a pilot, to be quite honest.
That is the problem. You get a free plane, but no pilot. What do? You
better get on Amigo, buddy.
Oh my god!
Start creating those YouTube videos.
I definitely think it's an interesting kind of and I think it's funny because Paul even said, it's a good question. Surprisingly, people would want a personal chef. I think I'm very food driven, so to me, personal chef is my first instinct there. But I don't know. It is a tough one.
Well,
I prefer the chef.
I would prefer. I honestly, traveling sucks the older that I get. I hate the lines. I hate. It's so uncomfortable to travel. Just the whole experience that as I get older, I start to hate it. Yeah. even on short flights, like it's just so much to deal with, the security and the delayed flights and just everything. I would prefer a private jet. I mean, if
What
I had
happens if it breaks down? Then what are you going to do? Then you're screwed.
well, what if my chef? What if my oven breaks? What if my chef?
Yeah, he can walk next door to your neighbor and cook it in there.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's there's definitely pluses and minuses to both, we'll say.
Yeah,
But
for sure. What's your favorite food?
Honestly, I love like American food. You know, just like the iconic stuff that you could get at a diner. I just love so much stuff. I love everything that's bad for you. Like I'm not. You never hear me say salad or something like that. I just love, I love big juicy burgers. I love greasy pizza. I love, the stuff that's gonna kill me.
As long as you're smiling, right?
dude, that's all it comes down to. I am 100% on board with that plan. I was telling Steve I ate Oreos for breakfast today, so like I'm not one to take nutrition advice from ever. But
No, but it's not stuff that I eat. But if you're like every like day or regularly, but if you're asking me like, what is my favorite? It's like, yeah, if I can get, a big beautiful steak or a burger or,
yeah, that would be delicious.
Yeah,
This is
I'm all
this is
about the Indian food and Thai food and
I love
Asian
Indian food.
for sure.
Indian food's amazing. Oh man, Indian is. I love so much food, honestly, and it's one of the funniest things about traveling. You get to eat really good food, but you also get to eat really bad food that the local things think are great. Like
so
I was in. Oh man, I don't want to say the country because I'm gonna get in trouble. My friends will recognize. But I was in a country and I was offered to go to an Indian restaurant. And they're like, this is the best Indian restaurant in this country. And I'm like, okay, let's go. And so we go there and it's like, I cannot even describe the experience. It was like the worst place ever. Everything about it was bad and it made me feel sick. My stomach was like grumbling during my show. And just horrible.
Oh, it was during a show?
It was right before a show.
That's dangerous.
And I was just like, I just had so much regret. I just like, why did I listen to these people? Like I've never like why didn't you guys offer me the food from your own country? Why did you bring me to an Indian restaurant?
Did they get sick too? Were they sick?
No, they liked it, but it's like I've eaten a lot of food, but it's like I just you have to be careful where you're traveling because people don't know what certain things are supposed to taste like. So like if you go to Asia or you go to Europe, they don't really understand American food there. So like the pizza's usually really weird, the hamburgers are really weird. Actually, it's gotten a lot better in the last few years. But if you were to go like 10 years ago, it was bizarre. It was like they didn't know how to make a hamburger.
I'm gonna tell you right now. I live in California now, and I'm from the East Coast. And as Tyler knows, the pizza on the East Coast is unbeatable. So the pizza out here sucks. There's a couple spots that are really close to the like East Coast pizza, but they're 2 hours away. But dude, it's funny because certain places, and I mean, who knows what it is.
It is funny. People have different standards. So you'll have people tell you, oh, this place is great. This pizza is great. And you go there and you just have different standards from them. And you're like, yeah, it's not really that good.
Dude, this brings back like horrible memories. But I was living in Napa a couple of years ago, and there's this diner right down the street from us, and it's right next to this Chinese joint. And it's in like a little strip mall. And our friends, our friends brought us to this Chinese spot. What's it called? It's I don't remember, but it looks fine. It doesn't look like dingy or anything. It looked like a normal Chinese restaurant. We ordered normal chicken and broccoli, beef and broccoli, whatever we got. I don't even remember. I remember I got chicken, and I took one bite. And the second I took a bite, I was just like, something's not right about this. Like, they swore by this place, and I was wrecked for 3 months. I got a parasite. I was totally like, every time. It's called Wasing Restaurant. That's what it's called. Look it up. If you're ever in Napa, don't go to Wasing Restaurant. It's right across from Rite Aid. Stay away from it.
Super specific.
That was terrible.
Oh my god. I think you're right though, Maddie. Like, food everyone does have different taste, and I think it's funny because you would find someone who maybe grew up somewhere where pizza's not great by pizza standards, but they love it, and then they go somewhere like New York City and they try pizza, like New York City pizza, for the first time, and they're like, this is terrible, or they don't like it, or like, this isn't pizza that I know. It's all that nostalgia factor. Like, it's crazy to think how much of life in general is driven by nostalgia.
California Pizza Kitchen. Have you what is it? What's that place called? Domino's. I saw someone literally post about it the other day on Instagram, and they were saying like, oh, Domino's is the greatest. I think it was on like an Alex Pandrea post, actually. But they were talking about pizza, and someone wrote, oh yeah, Domino's is the greatest. And I'm like, I don't understand. Where do you live where Domino's is good?
Yeah, Domino's is it's an interesting place. It really depends on like what's around you, like, and how popular things are. So last year I was in Spain. I was in a small town called Pamplona, and the two fast food joints that they had where I was staying was a Domino's and a KFC, and they were extremely popular. Lines through the door. I don't go to KFC often, but I swear, like, I've never seen a KFC like that. Usually you go to KFC and there's like, there's some shady characters hanging around the KFCs. And it's just like, I don't know why. It's a KFC, McDonald's thing, Burger King. There's always weird people at certain restaurants.
They're really cheap. You can get like a full meal for like 12 cents.
No, but in Spain, I go to this KFC. I've never seen anything like it. Packed. Line through the door. Families there. Whole families going to eat at KFC. You're like, what world am I living in? I've never seen families lined up to go eat out at KFC. I've never seen it.
Maddie, I'm gonna say it on record here. I'm gonna say it. You guys can all judge me. So check it out. I haven't had KFC probably in, I want to say 15, 16 years. But KFC is really good. I love KFC. Their potatoes, their powdered potatoes are so bomb.
KFC, hold on. Let me get back to KFC, but hold on. So the Domino's was also very popular. And Domino's, if you go to Domino's in the U.S., it's empty. You might have a few people just, waiting to pick up something. You can tell they've had a long day at work. They're just going to get a quick pizza. They probably have, no other options. They're just getting something. I mean, maybe some people really like it. I don't want to knock it, but it's not, it's not a hugely popular place. Like, people aren't, clamoring to go to Domino's.
Right.
But again, I was in this small town and packed. People going. I've never seen anybody going out on dates to Domino's and KFC. In America.
Yeah, no, dude. If someone goes on a date to KFC or Domino's, like, that should be the date. The date should be over.
But that is a thing in Europe where it's like, it's more of a. I'm in this town. I see people going on dates. They're going on dates. It's a KFC. They're on a date. And it's like a night out for them. So, it's, I guess, just a perception of, what is available and what's around. KFC, though, honestly, KFC is like really KFC is like, I have KFC every once in a while, and it's usually, 'cause I love fried chicken. Depends on the options. Sometimes there's no options for, really good fried chicken. I'm like, oh, let me just get some KFC. I almost always regret it. It just like makes me,
Now, do you get original or do you get crispy?
I don't know. I don't. I go back and forth because I always think it's going to be a different experience.
Yeah,
I'm always
it's never a different experience.
I always get too much chicken, and I always make myself feel like really bad afterwards. And it always ends with me saying, "I'm never eating KFC again."
Like me and White Castle.
Like I'm never doing
What's
this.
White Castle?
White Castle's like a New Jersey, Pennsylvania like chain with very small square burgers. They're very delicious, but they wreak havoc on your insides. They're delicious. You don't
I
understand.
haven't had fast food in probably 17 years.
Yeah, the only fast food I eat anymore is Taco Bell from time to time, and that's because sometimes you're just craving Taco Bell.
No,
I honestly, I want to go to Taco Bell. I haven't been to Taco Bell in
So good.
20 years.
yeah, me.
So
I've eaten at Taco Bell once, and it was probably when I was like,
I honestly,
22.
I don't know how anything tastes at Taco Bell. I just see the ads. I'm like, I want to try this out. I don't know if I really want to try it out, but like, yeah, I know it's gonna let me down, but I kind of just want to, do it.
Mahdi, you know that feeling you get after you eat KFC? I'm pretty sure you're gonna have the same feeling after you eat Taco Bell.
No, you will. I promise you that. It's satisfying in the moment, but the next day it is not. So
Yeah, no thanks.
yeah, I do love some good taco. That's the only fast food I'll eat. Like twice a year, maybe I'll grab Taco Bell, and that's like my cheat meal, we'll call it. But oh, man. Well, guys, before we kind of wrap here, I just want to see if anyone has any other questions in the audience.
Last
know it's
minute question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Brad's just giving advice on steering clear of Taco Bell still. He says you'll regret it in the morning for sure.
Mock says, "Is your guys' Taco Bell combined with KFC? Because it is in Canada."
Yeah, that's how it is in Canada.
Yeah, it is. I think it is in a lot. I think they're owned by the same company because if you do a lot of rest stops on the highway out on the East Coast, they're kind of together.
Yeah.
We also have a lot of Wendy's combined with Tim Hortons in Canada.
We don't have any Tim Hortons in the U.S., so. But I could see that. Even like what was the big one that used to do it? Dunkin'
You guys
Donuts
have that. What's the one that you have out there in Philadelphia? Everyone loves it. It's that gas station / shop stop.
Sheets.
No, it's like what on the burger or something. It's in Philly. Wiener Schnitzel. Is it Wiener Schnitzel?
I've never eaten at Sheets, but I've seen it on the road several times, and I've never had any inclination to go.
I have to tell you, the food out of their the Sheets rest stops is actually some of the best rest stop food you'll get. Like I've had good quesadillas out of there, surprisingly, like plain quesadillas, like grilled chicken, blah blah, whatever. But it's actually a better rest stop food than I'd eat there over a 7-Eleven any day of the week.
Whataburger. No, I think it's called Wiener Schnitzel or something.
Yeah.
So Caitlin has a question. How was it working on Portable Playground 2 with Kevin Ho and all the other really well-known codists and magicians?
All right. So Kevin Ho, I've known for many years, and he used to come to Toronto a lot. And he was coming to Toronto, and so I set up an event for him, and it was sort of like a magic show, sort of like a cardistry show. So he did a segment, and it was really cool. We had so many people that came, and he did cardistry in front of the live audience, and it was like the first time that he. Maybe it's been done before, but he was telling me, it was the first time that he knows of somebody performing cardistry in front of an audience like that, like in front of a live audience. and probably somebody else has done it before us, but that was a very cool experience. So anyways, he was in Toronto, and he said, can I film you do some stuff? And I said, sure. I'm like, what do you want me to do? Because I'm used to doing magic. And so I did some flourishes or stuff that could be seen as flourishes, and he put it into this video, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just messing around, but he put it into this video, and people really liked it. And then he took that footage and then he cut it into like a solo video, very short. It was just like a minute of me doing stuff, and that was a video that also went pretty viral. It was called He's Fond of Cards. If you see that on YouTube, it's like a little solo cardistry video that I'm in, and it went on all these websites. So we had viewers on YouTube, but it was on all these different like websites and stuff, and a lot of people saw that. It was on the front page of Snapchat and all these different, all these different things. It was on the Daily Mail. It was all over the place.
That's cool. Well, we'll link it down below for sure.
Yeah, we'll definitely link that in the comments below. We also figured out, thanks to the audience at hand, we figured out the mystery of what Steve was trying to figure out, and it was Wawa. Steve also figured it out, but
I figured it out.
Yeah, but then you were corrected and told it was a gas station because it is. But
but it's a gas station, but it has like they have
Wawa
like subs. They're known for their subs.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Gyros or gyros or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. But one of the other questions we had that came in here was, and this is more of an interesting kind of card related, but kind of philosophical question to some extent. If you link love to hearts, what other nouns would you link to the other suits?
Hold on, what?
If you link, you know how normally in a deck of cards, hearts are kind of linked to the idea of love, obviously, in general in life. What sort of emotion or noun would you link to the other suits? You personally.
For me, so without using the traditional meanings, I would say, heart. Well, I would say heart is life, spade is death, diamond is fortune, and club is destiny.
Interesting.
Those are good.
I like that kind of, well, and it is interesting too, because I think there are so many variations on the suits, especially if you then delve into the realm of like tarot decks and, how that kind of relates similar there. So yeah, that's a very interesting kind of approach to it. Cool.
Yeah, Caitlin said standing ovation.
There you go. Any other questions, guys? I think that might have been one of the last ones we had there. Mahdi, we really do appreciate you coming on tonight. We actually, listen, this was a fun time chat, and I think it was really great to see not only the Emanations deck and the Hidden Leaves, but also the kind of the concept and the not the motivation, but the inspiration behind them. Even like you mentioned, the little touches in homage to the Tally-Ho decks and things like that was really cool. And I think stuff that a lot of people didn't really realize or know about.
If you guys want to find out more, check out the magazine article that we did with, I don't know if it's called 52 Plus Joker or
Lee Asher's,
Lee Asher. They have some card club, collectors club, and they do a magazine. And in there, I go into full detail. So I really talk about every little thing in terms of the artwork and the design and all that stuff. So if you really want to have it laid out, you can see it in that article.
Which we'll link that below for sure, because we'll hunt down the article. I think they recently digitized all of the quarterly where they do those articles, so we'll find it and link it out. Also, definitely check out beforemagic.com. Check out some of the decks that Mahdi has if you haven't seen them before. I'm pretty sure you do still have both decks available on site, or is it
Yeah,
only the
go on the site beforemagic.com/store. I printed a lot of decks, so I still have decks available if you guys want to buy them. I actually do have some uncut sheets left as well. So if you guys want to check those out, but also if you go on the website, if you are into magic, I do a podcast. I do, I write articles and all sorts of stuff. So, there's stuff for everyone.
Yeah, and we'll
and
definitely
you're
there's even
really engulfed in the
tutorials.
community too, which is really
There's
cool.
even tutorials. There's tutorials on like so I wanted to do a series of tutorials on like all card handling stuff, but that's stuff that's not revealing magic. So I have tutorials on like ribbon spread and shuffling and stuff. But it's funny because it's all like how I do it.
That's cool.
That's really cool.
I think it'd be cool. I think it'd be cool for people to try it.
Well, I figure it's just interesting for people because you can understand the concepts.
Right.
But that's also there. But yeah, all that you can find on the website, I believe.
Awesome.
Yep. So beforemagic.com, we will link that in the comments below as well. We actually got a good amount of things that I'm gonna try and link to tonight, like the article Reset by Paul Harris, beforemagic.com. What else do I have?
KFC.com.
I'm not gonna link to KFC. We're not
KFC.com, Taco Bell.
I want to see if I can find the He's Fond of Cards YouTube, so I'll link that below as well for people to check out. But again, guys, first off, we really appreciate you guys coming out to watch the show tonight. Mahdi, we really appreciate having you on. Absolutely love the decks of cards. I think they are, again, they have such a nice old world feel to them, but they're still obviously so modern and so unique. It's really amazing. So kudos to you on that one, man. It's a fun time there. Can't wait to see what you come out with next. I think really I'm excited to see what you come out with next, whether it be, a color variation on the hidden leaves or, a third new deck. So
Yeah, I look forward to whatever badass Joker you're gonna do.
Let's do this when I thanks. When I am further along that stage, right now that's sort of on pause. But when I am further along stage, to do whatever deck, I don't know. I have so many ideas, but whenever it is ready, maybe we can do a new episode, and I can actually show you the artwork that's in process and get feedback and stuff like that.
Yeah, we'd love that. That would be really amazing. And before we sign off here, guys, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I got to shout out the sponsors again real quick. So if you haven't seen them before, or if you missed the Kickstarter originally with the Docs Playing Cards Latin Quarters, keep an eye out. V2 is coming out soon. It will include Latin Quarters cards, Latin Quarters poker chips, a beautiful display case for it. So if you're really big into poker, phenomenal cards, gilded decks. Definitely check it out. Second sponsor of the night, Marvelous Decks. Thank you so much for for checking out the show, especially with Marvelous Decks. There's so much coming out there with there's a tagline to this that I'm always struggling over here. So we'll say there, your imagination is about to burst wide open as playing cards come to life. And I think one of the cool things about the message here is, all that nostalgia that we talked about tonight, just in general, how nostalgia impacts people. But, the idea of, again, playing with fireflies as a kid, getting to see them light up in the jar and the mystery of that phosphorescence inside of an insect that flies around, or seeing the glitter on a butterfly's wings and really just catching it in the summer sun. That's what really Marvelous Decks is looking to bring to playing cards. And I think that's an exciting feeling that a lot of people are going to love. So make sure to keep an eye out for Marvelous Decks.
Yeah.
And as always, make sure to keep an eye out for next episode of Deckin Around, because
Can anybody guess who's on it? Can anybody guess? We'll give a hint. The person is in the room right now. Can anybody guess who's going to be on next week?
Not the room with us, but the chat room.
I hope. They're not here.
But
anybody? All right, go ahead, Ty. All you.
So next week's guest. Next week's guest, make sure to tune in. It is going to be Caitlin Chen. We are really excited to have Caitlin on. She actually has a Kickstarter live right now with her two partners in Aspire Cards, the Flatline Playing Cards. Beautiful deck. If you haven't checked it out, make sure to do so. And thank you again so much, everyone, for tuning in. We really do appreciate all the support that you guys bring to the show, and
thank you
we always
so
enjoy the
much.
banter as well. So have a nice one, everyone.
Peace, Mahdi.